As we continue to feel the rivers coursing through our bodies, coursing through our veins, may the words that I am about to share with all of you do the work that they are meant to do. Our human experience vacillates between certainty and doubt. It is also one that is embroiled in intricate workings of power and grace. We enter diverse relational encounters that engage our intellectual, emotional, and spiritual faculties. These encounters are necessarily shaped by our worldviews, biases, and attitudes, and also become critical contact points where histories and power relationships meet. Depending on the orientations between space and people, we can either be framed as threatening invaders, or if we comport with the establishment, are invited without hesitation. We are constantly being modulated by oppressive rubrics that require us to utilize particular vocabulary to defend our commitments and relationships. As an Afro-Boricua or a native of Puerto Rico of African heritage, I look to my ancestors who struggled and survived through radical acts of resistance. They call on me as an inheritor of sacred wisdom of interdependence, to learn and remember that I am not just an individual, but part of a larger community of faithful witnesses who were committed to political participation and revolution. My ancestors remind me of the heinous acts of imposition, genocide, colonization, racial fascism, and nihilism. The effects still ever present today. More importantly, my ancestors remind me of keeping hope alive for a decolonial social imaginary, one that invites us to hold the reverence for perspectives in the margins, to honor our land and our humanity, and to invite creative expressions of crossing. Crossing into liminal worlds where respecting marginalized knowledge and realities is a daily precedent. Acknowledging a liminal world means not being bound up in holding difference captive through the gaze of dominance, but rather disidentifying from it. Perhaps this creates some discomfort or ambivalence. These feelings are valid, but are vital drivers for change. I ask you to consider from what sources of inspiration, revelation, and revolution for a more humanizing world do you draw from? Today, I feature the scholar, visionary, and Afro-Boricua Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, who was born to a Black mother and a father of Puerto Rican and German descent, giving him his distinct last name. He moved to New York at the age of 17 and lived among exiled Cubans and Puerto Rican nationalists and intellectuals here in Manhattan. He learned English in high school and taught Spanish to support himself. His experience resonates with my own. I saw and continue to see part of my identity and challenge in his experience. He actively resisted binary thinking, rejecting having to claim only part of his identity in order to be known in certain spaces. A harrowing experience that Schomburg experienced in his childhood were words spoken to him by his 5th grade teacher, who said the following words to him: Black people have no history, no heroes, no great moments. These words and his participation in a literary group in Puerto Rico inspired him to reclaim his agency and to articulate possibility, visibility, and legibility for a people consigned to social death. His legacy, which includes dedicating his life to archiving Afro descent contributions in Latin America and countries worldwide, including the 14th century Spain, can be found today at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture at the Harlem branch of the Public Library of New York, one of the biggest collections of Black thought in the whole world. Indeed, we can wield power both in constructive and destructive ways. The Capitol insurrection is just one of myriad of instances across centuries where power, notably white supremacy, is used to subjugate and to reify the status quo. Conversely, as international movements and initiatives such as Black Lives Matter, the UU8 Principle, and the creation of the Black Lives Unitarian Universalist Collective, or BLUE, have shown to us we cannot work towards liberation and speak truth to power if we do not collectively and actively galvanize our resources, our energies, and our networks of power. Performative allyship were hollow discourses of diversity that do not translate into meaningful action, only perpetuates white supremacy. I end today by speaking about grace for a political standpoint. The grace that I am speaking of gives us the space to engage in what Emma Goldman calls quote, a community dance of revolution, unquote. In other words, allowing room to witness our full humanity, including the complex simultaneity of being in the world together. This requires us to both apprehend and question the Western conception of who is considered human. What knowledge production count? And what social relationships matter? As the co-founder of the International Black Lives Matter movement, Alicia Garza invites us to interrogate our sensibilities of comfort and security by asking ourselves, how can we work together in solidarity, and how can critical discomfort be an act where learning from those in the periphery is honored and centered? She writes about the urgency of political education, and I will quote her. We cannot expect to unravel common sense about how the world functions if we do not do that work. Political education helps us unearth our commonly held assumptions about the world that keeps the same power dynamics functioning the way they have always have. It supports our ability to dream of other worlds and to build them. And it gives us a clear picture of all that we are up against. So, how will we meet this challenge of upending the status quo and a common sense that denigrates a people? What learning around power and grace will we engage in to move towards not just equity or equality, but liberation for all? Take a moment today to write down your commitments and to find moments in your everyday life to live them out. Let us be enlivened by the possibilities for change. We conclude Black History Month.